Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 2011 to 2016 series Green Lantern, part of DC's The New 52. It's all about Thal effin' Sinestro. Okay, not really. I'm mostly just making a callback, but the big pink man with the wispy mustache is probably a lot more of a big deal than some might realize. Wanting to make a perfect foil for Hal Jordan, Hal's original creators of John Broome and Gil Kane brought us Sinestro by only the 7th issue of Hal's original solo series. There, he was seen to be a former Green Lantern from a planet called Kuragar, but he had eventually used his Green Lantern power to become a dictator, ruling the entire planet mercilessly. This would get him kicked out of the Green Lantern Corps, but unsatisfied with that, he would develop a Yellow Lantern ring that drained energy from Green Lantern rings, making him the perfect arch-nemesis. As time went on, Sinestro would gain further character development, particularly in the reveal that he had once been best buds with Hal's predecessor, Abin Sur, and had even fallen in love with and married Abin's sister, Arid Sur. Arin's death would then later be claimed as the catalyst for why Sinestro turned evil. When DC decided to write Hal out of their universe by turning him into the supervillain Parallax, it seemed only appropriate to also remove his main big bad from the equation as well. So, before departing, evil Parallax Hal snapped Sinestro's neck. But just as Geoff John was clearly unsatisfied with Hal's death, he seemed to be unsatisfied with Sinestro's death. So Hal's return in Green Lantern Rebirth was tied directly to Sinestro's return in the same series, and the Kuragaran would go on to play a major role in the following years of Green Lantern stories, particularly in the event stories like Sinestro Corps Wars, Blackest Night, Brightest Day, and finally, War of the Green Lanterns, which I covered in my previous video. As we saw, that story ended rather abruptly on Sinestro suddenly becoming a member of the Green Lantern Corps once again, and Hal being kicked out and sent back to Earth. And where that story ends is exactly where this one begins, so let's see where else this craziness will lead us and take this away. The comic opens on Sinestro being somewhat forcibly inducted into the Green Lantern Corps by reciting the classic oath. The Guardians have decided to make Sinestro's return into the GLC official, claiming this as his chance for redemption, and they let him take a lantern and head off to protect his space sector, just as every Green Lantern does. But Ganthet, alone among the Guardians, is unhappy with this choice, considering Sinestro far too dangerous to let loose on the universe, especially with him having the power of a Green Lantern. And he accuses the other Guardians of having bad judgment. But they, of course, don't see it that way and say, no, it's you who has the bad judgment because of your emotions, and they proceed to simply rip those emotions right out of him. Which I guess is something they can do. Once again unfeeling, Ganthet is finally made a part of the plans of the other Guardians again, and those plans are focused on the breaking of the spirit of their own Green Lantern Corps, which includes removing the most troublesome from the equation so that they can be replaced by something called the Third Army. We'll see how this occurs throughout the other New 52 Green Lantern comics as I cover them as well, but for now, let's focus on Sinestro. Old Thal here has returned home to Kuragar, only to discover that it has been taken over by his own Sinestro Corps, and they're ruling as evilly as he ever did. Knowing that even he can't take down his entire Corps by himself, Sinestro heads to seek help from the only person he knows he can force to assist him, Hal effin' Jordan. Hal has been busy failing at getting back to regular life on Earth. He has no job, no money, he gets Kirill angry at him for being so self-focused, and eventually gets evicted from his apartment. So into this bottom of the barrel, Sinestro shows up and creates Hal a new Green Lantern ring so that Hal can help him. This ring can't hurt Sinestro and can be shut off by him at will, so without much other choice, Hal follows his new boss back to Kuragar. Sinestro has a plan to put a Green Lantern battery inside the main yellow battery, as this was a built-in failsafe to shut the yellow battery down, but when a woman named Arsona becomes threatened, even Sinestro loses his cool and he jumps out to attack the Yellow Lanterns. Hal attempts to stick to the plan, but the main battery just tries to teleport him to the antimatter universe the moment he enters it. Once it realizes he's not Sinestro though, it spits him back out and both he and Sinestro end up captured with a bunch of Kuragarans. That sounds like a cookie. I want a Kuragarin. Following a plan from Hal, Sinestro makes even more copies of his ring for all of his fellow prisoners to be able to power up, but the Kuragarians, led by Arsona, simply use this opportunity to attack him. We learn here that Arsona used to be Sinestro's right-hand man in the days leading up to him becoming a dictator, and the two clearly have some level of feelings for each other, though nothing is really ever going to be given the chance to come of that. Sorry for those of you out there very interested in Sinestro's love life. You know who you are. Since the rings were created by Sinestro, they're also unable to hurt him. So the ready Kuragarians instead turn to attack the Yellows as they attempt to jailbreak, and this time Sinestro goes with Hal to the main battery to fire up the Green Lantern inside of it. This causes the battery to attempt to defend itself, pulling back the power from all the yellow rings and knocking the entire core into a coma. The Kuragarians aren't entirely sure how to feel about Sinestro saving them, but he knows he's not worthy of praise, and he takes Hal and the captured Sinestro core and leaves the planet. He then sends Hal back home, letting him keep the ring but leaving it without a charge, so once again he's stranded there. So Hal decides it's time for him to finally grow up and starts attempting to rekindle his relationship with Carol. Only Sinestro almost immediately shows up again looking for his help. This time it's because he had gone to hunt down Lissa Drac, the keeper of the Book of the Black. With the help of this Power Rangers looking dude, a newly made up classic superhero named Starstorm, Sinestro is able to overpower Drac and get his hands on a page of the Book of the Black. And at that moment, he's hit by a glimpse of the second volume of this series. I mean the future. He sees the future. And the future that he sees is that the Guardians are working to get rid of the Green Lanterns, that the Indigo Lanterns are somehow involved, and that Hal Jordan is destined to die at Black Hand's, hands. So Sinestro goes to retrieve Hal so that they both can find out what this is all about. But before he has much a chance to explain what's going on to Hal, the Indigo tribe shows up on Earth as well and kidnaps them both. Back on their planet, Hal finally learns what we saw at the end of Blackest Night, that the Indigo tribe had taken Black Hand and forced him to become one of their own. Hal manages to trick Hand into using the Indigo's ability to summon all other lantern colors to summon up green willpower, and Hal uses Hand's head to recharge his power ring. 'Cause you can do that, I guess. He then goes searching for Sinestro, only to find that Sinestro is now an Indigo as well. To convert him, we see that they took him back to a time when he still had compassion, back when he was in love with Arun Sur. And for the first time, we see what actually became of her. It seems Karagar had for a long time been split by a civil war, and when Sinestro attempted to bring an end to the conflict, a child strapped with a bomb blew himself up in the middle of a city. And Arun was accidentally caught in that explosion. Reliving this event allows the Indigo tribe to really bring out the compassion inside of Sinestro and make him one of them. But Hal finds an apologetic Sinestro to just be downright creepy and wrong, and yeah, I'm kinda with him on that. So he escapes from them and attempts to track down their central battery so he can shut it down, which would release Sinestro. And that leads him to this guy named Nostromo. Nostromo reveals that in the long ago past, he and Abin Sur discovered the indigo energy inside this planet called Nock. In realizing that weapons made from it created empathy in those struck by it, they decided to forge an indigo ring. Abin then brought to Nock a woman named Aroke, a remorseless child killer and Abin's own greatest enemy, as she once killed Abin's daughter. Which is, I guess, a reveal that Abin once had a daughter. With the ring on her finger, she immediately came to deeply regret what she had done, and became the first warrior of the Indigo tribe, Indigo 1. Abin would then go about making up the rest of the tribe from other murderers and thieves, the most wretched hive of scum and villainy in all the universe. But with the Indigo rings on, they became compassionate, caring people, and an army for Abin Sur. Not just against the Blackest Night that he foresaw coming, but also for what came after the Blackest Night. The fall of the Lanterns and the rise of the Third Army from the Corps' real threat, the Guardians of the Universe. Learning that Abin is dead, though, prompts Nostromo to just immediately shut off the battery, which does free Sinestro, but also all the others, including Black Hand. Hal is quickly able to convince Nostromo to turn the battery back on, as we learn that Indigo 1 has actually become deeply compassionate from her years of exposure to the ring. But Black Hand throws himself off a cliff to die rather than be reunited with his ring. And dead once again, he's resurrected once more by the Black Ring. He uses the ring to return home to Earth in the graveyard he grew up in. When Sinestro then tries to show Hal the future he saw inside of the Book of the Black, the book instead transports both of them to Earth, straight to Black Hand. The book tells Hand that Hal Jordan is not his enemy and that, even further, Hal will be the greatest of all Black Lanterns. Because of course the greatest Black Lantern's gonna be some white guy. Typical. Hand refuses to believe it and fights the two Greens. They start gaining the upper hand on him only for the Guardians to intervene, infusing Hand with enough power to kill both Jordan and Sinestro. Because by now, the Guardians have unleashed the First Lantern. The First Lantern had been hinted at previously, even before the New 52. There were several references to him that I quickly skipped over in my video on War of the Green Lanterns, and we'll be learning more about him in another video because I'm not covering that whole mess just yet. For now, what we see is that he's been hidden away in some box, and when the Guardians go to open that box, we find a second group of Guardians. These Guardians had willingly locked themselves away millions of years ago to stand guard, ensuring the First Lantern never got released. So when our regular group of Guardians show up to more or less release him, they try to stop their brothers and sisters. But our regular collect-em-all set of Guardians manages to win the battle and lock their siblings back in the box before leaving with the still caged First Lantern. They then draw on his power to create a being from their own bodies. This grotesque creature is the first of the new Third Army. And in case you're confused, the first army was the Manhunters and the second was the GLC themselves, meaning that once again, they felt their army had failed the universe and needed to be replaced. These Third Army monsters, as will be pointed out later in the New 52 Green Lantern Corps, have no mouths to talk back, no ears so they can't listen to anyone else's orders, and no hearts so they can't be swayed by emotions. They are completely under the control of the Guardians, and when they kill, they absorb their enemy to make them into a copy of themselves, so they're like another zombie enemy for the Green Lanterns. And so with that power, the Guardians send them out across the universe to turn all life into these same mindless, unfeeling creatures completely controlled by the Guardians. And that brings us to Simon Baz. Simon is a car thief who unknowingly stole a van filled with explosives. He drives it to a warehouse he knows will be empty and jumps out so it can explode with minimal damage. But because of his race and his religion, Baz is sent to Guantanamo Bay as a terrorist. He insists on his innocence, which of course no one believes, but before they can get to waterboarding him, he's broken out of jail by a Green Lantern ring. This ring is the recombined ring of Hal and Sinestro. We saw earlier when they were being killed that they both sent out their rings to look for a replacement. And since, I guess because they were originally one ring, they kinda recombined together, which also combines their mission. So the person most suited to both what Sinestro wants and what Hal wants is apparently Simon Baz. From here kicks off a long list of crossover events, one pretty much right after the other. Starting with Rise of the Third Army, moving on to Wrath of the First Lantern, then pretty much straight to Lights Out, before a short break bringing us to Green Lantern New Gods' Godhead. And I debated it with myself for a long time, and I think the best thing to do is to cover each of those individually after I've covered each of the main series. So for the time being, I'll give a much briefer overview of events from here. Simon soon receives the help of the cutest freaking Green Lantern ever! Oh my god, look at him! Why didn't anybody tell me there was a squirrel Green Lantern? Just look how fluffy he is! Sorry, Buzzed. I have a new favorite lantern. But hey, you're still number 2, buddy. Where was I? Oh, right. So with the help of Badge here, Simon eventually tracks down Hal and Sinestro, who are still semi-alive but in a place called the Dead Zone. In attempting to rescue Hal, Simon accidentally instead rescues Sinestro, who goes off to face the now free First Lantern alone. This freedom for the First Lantern happened because the Guardians ended up overtaxing themselves trying to control the Third Army, giving the First Lantern the power and opportunity he needed to break free. In their confrontation, the First Lantern completely destroys Kurogar and all the people on it, which is super effed up. Why'd you guys feel the need to do that? This then, of course, prompts Sinestro to re-equip into his old yellow outfit, abandoning the greens to restart the Sinestro Corps. Hal, meanwhile, is able to take the black ring away from Black Hand and become a Black Lantern, then meets up with all the various Lantern Corps on Oa, who have all come to face off against the First Lantern. With the black ring equipped, Hal is able to drain the emotional energy out of the First Lantern, revealing him to be human, and then kills him with a raised from the dead Necron. This, for some reason, allows him to pop back on his Green Lantern ring and become alive again, but he finds Sinestro and Atrocitus took their revenge on the Guardians of the Universe and killed them all. And with that, we come to an end to Geoff John's nearly 9-year run on Green Lantern, and immediately the title is taken up by Robert Venditti, who will continue writing the title for the rest of the New 52 and all 50 issues of its follow-up DC Rebirth title. His run starts with Carol breaking up with Hal, because as we'll see in New Guardians, she's starting to fall for Kyle Rayner. Not that she tells Hal that here. Returning to Oa, the new group of Guardians, the ones from the box, decides not to take the place of their predecessors, instead giving the job of leading the Green Lantern Corps to Hal Jordan. Because he's the main character? Hal somewhat reluctantly agrees to take the promotion, and his first act is to set free all the rings the Guardians had been stockpiling from dead lanterns. Something we learned they were doing earlier in Green Lantern Corps as part of weakening the Corps in preparation for replacing them with the Third Army. Again, I'll get to that. Almost immediately after this, Oa is randomly attacked by Larfleeze, the Orange Lantern, and the new recruits come under fire the moment they arrive. During the battle, everyone's lantern powers suddenly wink off for a moment, and this is because of the upcoming Lights Out event. This event tells a story of a universe before ours, where those who would wield the emotional spectrum were called lightsmiths, but there the light was a limited resource that ran out, and when it did, the entire universe died because of it. The last survivor of that universe, this giant mamma jamma who will become known as Relic, somehow survived into our universe, and now wants to prevent the same thing from happening here. So he goes to various planets to shut down their core batteries for good, which include the Blue Lantern of Hope and the main green battery on Oa. Since Oa's battery was somehow apparently tied to the core of the planet, the entire planet explodes, leaving the Green Lanterns forced to find a new home. Luckily, by this point, Mogo has returned, as we'll see when I cover Green Lantern Corps next, and he/she adopts all the Greens and becomes their new home. Ah, good to have you back, big guy, big girl, little, but... Anyway, it's good to have you back, Mogo. The conflict ends with the emotional supply of the universe somehow being restored, but that's maybe not enough for everybody. Now knowing that the universe has a finite supply of emotional energy, some members of the Corps don't want to use their rings anymore out of fear of draining the emotional supply of the universe. This leads Hal to deciding that part of the Corps' new job should now be policing the use of the emotional spectrum. And yeah, I'm with Carol here. That seems pretty tyrannical and messed up, and I'm surprised more people don't seem to have a problem with it, but whatever. The first part of this new mission comes with chasing down a Star Sapphire that escaped from the Science Cells, the giant prison area of the Green Lanterns, way back during Larfleeze's attack on Oa. She's the leader of a gang of criminals, but that's pretty much her entire planet, and her people aren't happy with these space cops showing up on their turf and busting heads. I feel ya, Space Street Gang. I feel ya. But they're also no match for the Greenies, especially with Mogo showing up to shake the shit out of their planet. So to keep the peace, the Sapphire gives up her ring and her gang leaders turn themselves in. As soon as they get to Mogo, though, with the help of a Durlan shapeshifter who infiltrated the Corps, these Braidmen, as they're called, break free and attack. They manage to take control of the GL headquarters, and the Durlan shapeshifts into Hal to go all space tyrant in a broadcast sent out across the universe of how they're now policing the emotional spectrum. This kicks off a war that is basically another crossover event, but this one is pretty much just between two titles this time, this series and Green Lantern Corps. It sees the return of that former Star Sapphire the Green Lanterns just stopped, whose name is Prixium Null Ange, unite her people with a warrior race called the Coons, and with the Durlans, who I guess now are these crazy Cthulhu tentacle people and not the somewhat more generic looking aliens like we saw in Teen Titans. The Lanterns spend most of the war fighting Null Ange and the Coons, especially since they somehow managed to develop lantern power draining weapons based on technology stolen from that Relic guy. But by the end end of the war, it's revealed that the Daleks, the Durlans, were the real threat behind the whole thing. It seems all this work had been done so the Durlans could capture Sodom Yat, who hadn't been seen during the New 52 so far. Yat is a Daxamite, a race of beings closely related to Kryptonians like Superman, and so is an incredibly powerful Green Lantern. Since the Durlans are able to copy the DNA of those whose form they take, their goal all along was to find Daxam and gain their unique DNA to become as powerful as them. Since, like Kryptonians, the Daxamites need the energy of suns to power themselves up, after obtaining Daxamite physiology, the Durlans head to the homeworld of Lantern Goran Sun, as his people are a race of living energy beings that all live in a great ocean of connectedness. So, basically the founders from Deep Space Nine. But the Greens managed to show up just in time and, weirdly enough, even ally with Noel Ange as she felt betrayed by the Durlans, and managed to put a final stop to this war. There's a bit more going on than all of that, but I'll probably end up covering more of it when I cover Green Lantern Corps. The war is barely over before the Corps all start being attacked by the New Gods, bringing in the final big crossover story for the New 52 called Godhead. But again, I'll get to that later. By the end of the event, with all the devastation and war that has been happening around them, the Green Lantern Corps reputation is in the toilet. Hal blames himself, and I do too, and so in an effort to restore their good name, he decides to go rogue. To do this, he starts by stealing Krona's gauntlet. Remember that from my War of the Green Lanterns video? You watched that one, right? Kilowog, who is in on the plan, forces Hal to prove his commitment to the plan by fighting him to the point that Hal has no choice but to beat the crap out of his old friend. The goal is to have the Green Lantern Corps believe Hal is actually going rogue and chase him down and arrest him, so that they can scapegoat him to wipe all the crap off their good name and prove that even the leaders of the Corps aren't above the law. But then we entered the DCU era, and DC decided, hey, wouldn't it be fun if the thing everyone loves the most about the Green Lantern stuff, you know, the whole Green Lantern Corps thing, was just like, gone? So yeah, all the other Lantern books just end, and Hal finds himself as the only Green Lantern in the universe, despite also not being a Green Lantern anymore. Probably should have just changed the name of the comic at that point, but okay. Hal flies around the universe in a spaceship named Darlene with a wacky personality and rescues a kidnapped space prince from a Thunderdome arena and takes his kidnapper into custody. This unlikely but gosh darn it plucky group of adventurers then have some wacky adventures of their own. Mostly this just involves them freeing a world from under the oppressive control of a rogue group of Thanagarians. And yeah, that's pretty much it, actually. Hal goes off alone after this to face off against Relic and Black Hand again, ending with Black Hand getting sucked into something called the Source Wall, which is a sentence that will make a lot more sense once I've done my other videos. Sorry to keep saying that, but like, really, there's a lot to cover here. Despite plucky Space Prince and lovable but hateable outlaw guy, and even snarky Lady AI spaceship, continuing to remain characters somehow, the rest of the series continues to be Hal on his own as he heads home to Coast City for a while to visit his family, only for them to end up being attacked by the New 52 reimagining of the classic Green Lantern villain, Sonar. Sonar has built bombs that are charged up and activated by sound, and first uses one to blow up a carnival where Hal's brother's family were having a lovely spring day, and then attempts to use another one to blow up the entire gathering of the UN. Hal manages to save the day there though, and though Sonar declares he'll get Hal next time, we move on to the appearance of an alternate universe Parallax possessed Hal somehow ending up in the main DC universe. Parallax Hal is excited to find a living Coast City and wants to become its new protector, convinced that regular Hal is only going to fell it like he once did. Hal tries to explain that, like, nah dog, we've already been through all that and brought Coast City back from the dead, but Parallax just doesn't really care. In order to defeat his evil doppelganger, Hal draws so much energy from Krona's gauntlet that he starts to become an energy being himself, which seems to scare Parallax away. Hal almost forgets who he is, but with the help of his little bro is able to calm down and return to normal. And that's pretty much where the story ends without resolving anything whatsoever, because I guess they decided that all could wait for the DC Rebirth. So when I eventually cover that series, I guess you'll learn what happens. Until then, we need to get to the breakdown. The best thing, and in a sense the worst thing, about Green Lantern is its commitment to continuity. When Venditti takes over the title, he certainly expects you to not just know the rest of the New 52 Green Lantern, but most of their long history before that as well. And that's especially true of Geoff John's writing the series, as I pointed out in Blackest Night. And we see a lot of his calling back to long ago stories again here. It's interesting because one of the biggest selling points of the New 52 for new readers was not having to know DC history to jump into the stories, because everything had just been kind of reset anyways. But that's not at all so with GL and its related titles. They pick up right where they left off as if nothing at all had happened, referencing not just the stories that had only just come out, but all of their continuity in general. That can make it difficult for new readers to follow along, and yeah, I didn't like the Green Lantern comics I read early in the New 52 for much this reason. But again, this is also its appeal. It has the epic quality of the best long-reaching space operas, building a lived-in universe to easily compete with your Star Wars or Treks, whatever your personal preference. And so the more GL comics you read, the easier it is to like them. Much as with Aquaman, the series definitely drops in quality after Geoff John leaves, but I don't find it to be nearly as dramatic a drop, and Venditti certainly gets the concept of this as like a modern-day Buckaroo Banzai and really wants you to know that he's in on it, wink wink. So overall, I'm giving this series a recommendation level of very high. I can see people finding Venditti's run as very take it or leave it, but Johns' run is some of his best Green Lantern work, and overall it's a must-read adventure for fans of the Green. The collected editions get one of each ring color falling from red to white. And that's following the rainbow order of from bad to good that I established back in my Blackest Night video, rather than saying which core is actually the best of them, cause that would definitely be black. Zombies are cool, fight me! That then breaks down like this. Volume 3 clearly shines brightest with 9 issues collected, which includes a giant, and I mean giant, sized anniversary issue, while still leaving room for a bonus gallery, a sketchbook, and a farewell from Geoff Johns. Volume 5 is next, collecting 12 entire issues, and though it only has a few bonus covers interspersed between issues as a bonus, it has 12 freaking issues. Volume 1 is 6 issues, a bonus cover gallery, and a pretty sizable sketchbook. Volumes 2 and 7 are both 6 issues with an annual and bonus cover galleries. Volume 8 is 7 issues plus a bonus cover gallery and a bonus 7th issue in the first issue of the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps Rebirth series. Volume 4 is 7 issues and an annual with no other bonuses, and lastly Volume 6 is 6 issues, an annual, and no other bonuses. And now you know everything. Can I stop talking, please? Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. As I said, I'm definitely going to be covering the remaining New 52 Green Lantern series, and so I hope you're super ready, cause even I didn't realize just how many freaking videos I was going to be ending up making this year based on Green Lantern. It's gonna be a lot. I might intersperse it some here and there with some other videos because I don't know if I can handle that much Green Lantern at once. But either way it happens, it's gonna be quite a few videos, so I hope you're all here for it, cause I certainly am. And if you are, or you're excited about the other videos, or you just like hanging around and being cool, then make sure to click that like and subscribe button, and I hope to see you next time, right here in the Comic Cave.